black belt insights. What we have learned since becoming black belts, which we didn't know before. And this is the kind of stuff that can help you out. This is the thing. These are the things that no one teaches you. And obviously you got to go there to come back, but we've been there. And so since we've been here, I actually found a bit of a memory. You know how the phone will do that to you? Go, hey, do you remember this? You're like, no. Oh, shit. Huh. I got my black belt like freaking 9 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Well, yeah, eight and a half years ago.
Oh, wow.
Well, it was a trip. It was like me and Lockie had actually bought me this specific, an Isami belt.
It's very
from
nice.
Japan, you know? So it wasn't like just some generic. He'd actually made the effort. And that actually was very touching.
Yeah.
I was like, fuck, thank you, bro. Like, I really appreciated that. And the thing they always talk about when you get to black belt is like, it's only the beginning. And in a lot of ways, like you get there and you're like, there's so much stuff I don't know. But I feel the things that you learn once you get your black belt are it's slightly different. It's not like, oh, I learned the perfect guillotine or I learned the perfect leg lock. It was, this is a principle understanding I didn't have before. I got it now. It's like, shit, I wish I knew that before.
What do you got?
You know?
What was the biggest one for you?
Oh, man. I think the hardest thing for me, there's been two things that have been really hard for me to accept, but now I accept them, I'm better with it.
Right.
Getting tapped is a good thing for your jiu-jitsu. I used to hate that. I am the worst loser ever. I fume.
I refuse to believe that.
Bro, I can't even tell you. You can't even know the levels of sleepless nights I've had from getting submitted by a variety of people.
I revel in the idea.
You love it. You're sleeping.
The rare few times I've caught you, I've been like, yes.
This is going
to be a shit couple of months for JT.
Tossing and turning. But looking at other people, I always try to learn from people better than me. Because I'm like, you know, as much as I can think I'm smart, there's people far smarter, far better. And I aspire to be like them. And one of those people is Bernardo Faria. Like, unequivocally, one of the best competitors, a great teacher, and just a good human. Like, you meet Bernardo in person, you're like, I really like Bernardo, man. Like, it's so genuine. His whole vibe is, it never changes. It's very genuine.
Is what it comes across on the internet.
100%.
Yeah.
And you ask anybody who's spent time with him, you're like, yeah.
For those that don't know, he's the BJJ Fanatics guy.
Huge honor for me, guys. And he plays into it. He totally leans in on it. And, you know, having spent time with him earlier in the jiu-jitsu journey and spent time with him, you know, not that long ago, like 2019 at his academy, same guy. Hasn't changed. If anything, even nicer.
Yeah.
He would get tapped by blue belts. He wouldn't give a shit because he was just trying to work on something. And people would be like, it's crazy. Like, people would almost not speak bad, but what a lot of people don't know is he came to Alliance as a black belt from his previous gym, and he got bullied because he was kind of bit thick, bit chubby, and they used to call him Porco, like pig. They go Porco. Like when he won Pan Ams, he beat Braga Neto in the final. They were chanting Porco, right?
Savage.
But then it's so rough. I think this is like 2010.
It's a prerequisite for a Brazilian nickname. It's got to be savage.
It's so savage.
Yeah.
And then he beat Shanji in the heavyweight final with the half guard sweep.
Yep.
And actually, Fabio Gurgel had famously said, I got this guy in my gym who hits this sweep on everyone. And he had told Shanji, like, this is before they'd even matched up. I got this guy. He's got this sweep. And I think Shanji was like, oh, yeah, whatever. Like, try and sweep me then. And he did. And the thing that anyone I know who've competed against Bernardo said, he will fight to the death. This guy fights with a commitment and intensity that a lot of people don't have.
Right.
But in the gym, he's willing to fail. He's willing to get tapped, and he doesn't get embarrassed. I saw him get choked out.
What's the insight?
The insight is getting tapped is good for your jiu-jitsu because that is the learning. That getting tapped is the learning. If you're not getting tapped, you really don't understand where you suck. And so the thing for me is, even though it doesn't sit well with my pride and my ego, now that I'm like, okay, I got tapped there, what didn't I know there? I can fix my mistakes so fast now, as opposed to spending months hating Joe Worthington for getting me with the far side armbar.
Yes.
So the learning has gotten quicker.
And so you are actually Are you prepared to say on record you are cool with it now?
No, no. But I realized the value
You
in
can
it.
see the.
I learned from it.
Yeah.
Before I'd just be like, nah.
Because
they got lucky.
I still can't shake it. I know it's good for me, but I still can't shake it.
Hard.
Yeah.
It's difficult because
I mean, I care less, which is a different thing. But yeah, like it's when you hear about Gary Tonin, right? Where it's like, yeah, apparently he gets tapped a bunch in training, and he's said that he's like, that's because I'm always working on new shit and learning, and you're like, wow, I should really do more of that.
failure and learning is hand in hand. It's just, it can be a very confronting thing to get tapped multiple times, especially if in your head you're like, but I'm good at this. Why am I sucking? You know, but going into areas of sucking and discovery, I have become a better learner. Not that I want to get tapped, but when I do, I'm like, okay, what's the lesson? What's the takeaway? I try to apply that frame.
Yeah, nice.
How about you, Joe? Is there something that you've learned in the last couple of years that you feel since you got your black belt?
It's funny when I actually can't remember when I got mine, but it's probably been 4 years or something.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe longer. Yeah.
A couple things. Big one is that, and this is very generic, but honestly, it has to be said.
Talk to me, ChatGPT.
You will not be who you thought you were going to be at black belt. You will think that by the time you get to black belt, you will have mastered jiu-jitsu.
Right.
That is your illusion as from white belt all the way up. You're like, when I get there, I will know, like I won't be having the problems. I'll be all over this shit. And honestly, it was the exact opposite.
Oh.
All I could identify was more problems with my game.
Oh.
More problems with my jiu-jitsu once I got to black belt. And that for me has been just a really fascinating sort of truth to come to terms with.
Well, that's kind of sagely in a way. I mean, maybe this is the thing. And I think you have very good levels of humility relevant to, jiu-jitsu. But like they say, the more you know, the more you realize you do not know. And I think that's the thing. You get the black belt and you're like, oh my God, this thing is so big. Because I think, like, relevant to that, when you get to black belt, I believe the people who are on the other side, like the people earlier in the journey, the white belts are looking at you like, you're the master now. And they even call you like sensei or master or professor, like.
Please call me Bondi Joe.
Bondi Joe, the natural. Just, one of his many aliases. But I think the challenge there is the expectation. Oh, you're a black belt now? You got to have all the answers now. Well, it's like, I don't know. I'm with you in that way that I feel like I had more questions. I've always had a lot of questions, but coming to black belt, you're like, shit, there's an expectation to have a certain level of mastery when actually you're like, good at a couple things, but shit, this whole world of jiu-jitsu is so big.
Yeah.
And do you feel that that's improved your jiu-jitsu now that you've kind of had that?
I mean, it has.
Realization?
It has improved it, but I think moreover it's recalibrated my expectations.
Right.
And I don't think that, like if you had to ask me at brown belt, like, hey man, you got 3 stripes on your brown belt, you feeling like you're pretty close to mastery? I didn't ever even think about that. You know what I mean? Because your whole journey, you're just trying to improve.
Right.
So you're like, I am where I am, trying to get better, and that's the thing. I'm sure there's some people out there that maybe zoom out and take a bigger, but it's never been my style, and I don't think most people do that. So then you get to black belt, which just sort of happens, and you're like, and then you realize, I've had this sort of subconscious impression that by the time I was here, I would have mastered this shit. And, so far from it, you now realize all the things you don't know. Like it forces you to reflect on it, right?
Yeah.
Because you all of a sudden don't meet your expectation.
Yes.
You're like, I'm not the guy I thought I was going to be.
Right.
And then you start talking to other black belts, and then over time it gets reinforced to you, yeah, this is what almost everyone's going through. Now, there are, of course, those black belts that get there and are masters. There, you would say like the Tynan Dalpras potentially, or, I mean, I don't even know what that guy's, he's just a great practitioner, but you know what I mean? There are people that are truly pretty all-knowing by the time they get there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think
it ain't him.
Well, it's different. They say, it's not the, what is it? It's not the days and the years. It's the years and the days. It's like it's like how in depth or how intense has that study been? A guy like Tynan Dalpra is pretty much trained and competed since he was a kid, and it's his whole life.
Yeah, that's what I mean, though, right? Like there are those people now, and particularly the younger generation, right?
Yes,
who have applied a whole different. It's been a very different journey to what it's been for guys like us.
Sure, and look, I think at least for me, I was always really keen to get better, but for sure I had way more ego and pride before the black belt and have far less since I got it, in the sense that someone goes, "Oh, you're a black belt. Tynan Dalpra's a black belt." You're like, "Oh, no, that's not the same thing, dude. Like, we are not the same." And as much as I'm always like, how do I beat Tynan Dalpra? Plot his downfall. There's not a lot of ways that would ever happen. I think an insight for me was I used to write people off. If I didn't like someone in jiu-jitsu, like I thought they were a jerk, or I didn't like their online persona, or they were rude to me, I'd be like, F them, and throw the baby out with the bathwater. I just kind of like burn them. I'd be like, nah, they're irrelevant to me. But here's the thing. You got to separate the art from the artist. I have actually learned a ton from people I don't like, or I wouldn't care to hang out with them, but their jiu-jitsu knowledge is incredible. And even I've learned a lot from people doing things wrong. If I saw someone doing something stupid, I'd be like, what a idiot. And then I'd just write them off. This used to be my old approach. But now when I see someone doing something like grossly wrong, I'm like, why are they doing that? Like what is making that person make that mistake? Would I make that mistake? I try to be a bit more curious about why the f is that person doing that? In the same way, if I really, I don't like Gordon Ryan as a online persona. I've only ever met him in person once. I didn't really talk to him. I just kind of, Gordon, cool, you're there, I'm here. And I just can't agree with his whole approach with many things he says. But his jiu-jitsu is legitsu. There is no question of Gordon's knowledge, pedigree, understanding anything. There's a lot to be learned there. Same thing, Danaher. The knowledge is crazy. But as to whether or not you'd want to go hang out with the guy, totally different story. And I think that's the thing for me, that I am less critical of the person and more open to the lesson.
Right.
I think that's been a big change for me.
Yeah, right.
Since being a black belt. So I've been trying to learn more. Even though I'm doing jiu-jitsu less, I'm still keen to learn. I still want to get whatever I can. So if it's something real valuable from somebody I don't love, I'm still keen to get the knowledge. Ladies and gentlemen, you know me. I am a big energy guy. How do I get that big energy? I get it by staying hydrated. Also caffeine. But the key thing is you need the perfect mix of sodium, potassium, and magnesium. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the perfect blend of electrolytes, which keeps the water in your muscles so you get energy to roll and choke people. Now, today's sponsor, Sodi, brings you that perfect blend. And when you go to Sodi, SODII.com.au and use the code Bulletproof15, you get 15% off. That way you can stay hydrated and have big energy for jiu-jitsu.
Well, it's good. Sometimes that break, right? Like you haven't been doing much of late. Sometimes that's a really good time to reset and you sort of recalibrate your approach, don't you?
Yeah.
Where you're like, well, hang on, what do I actually want out of this now? Because I can't, it's not just doing what I always used to do, which was go in and smash and hopefully win most of my rounds.
Yeah.
You're like, no, I've actually got to evolve that.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you've changed a couple things since you got your black belt. Like you've mentioned things to me. I've gone, oh, that's different. Like the online learning piece and
I have
the things around that.
I have. Well, yeah. So I think having that realization about my jiu-jitsu, and then actually sitting and thinking about like, who do I actually want to be? Like what kind of black belt do I want to be? And there was a part of me that was like very accepting of it, because I'm like, I can still hold my own with most other black belts that I train with.
Yes.
Right. Don't get me wrong. There's plenty of black belts I've rolled with that just walk over me. Right. But you know, with training helmets, I'm like, yeah, I can do the thing. And so I'm like, that's good enough. But I was like, no, that doesn't quite meet my expectation. And so being sort of thrust into a bit of coaching at Vantage over the last year and a bit, which was not necessarily something I would have elected to do, but it came about through necessity and I was happy to do so. That forced me then to reflect on what I actually do in jiu-jitsu. And I realized I don't actually know how to articulate what I do. I just do it.
Yes.
And so the coaching thing was like, well, let's figure out how to articulate it to teach it to someone else. And that became really good for me.
Yeah.
And so once I started applying this lens of like, let's become a bit more deliberate and a bit more intentional, it started to make my training more deliberate and more intentional. And I started to get better results because I'm now doing something on purpose, right?
Nice.
Rather than just shooting from the hip.
Yeah.
And so while, you know, if I'm really honest, I'm not that guy to a T, right? Really what I liked is to just show up and rip in and have a good couple of rounds.
Yeah.
I have found like a new kind of enjoyment and through that more deliberate approach of learning jiu-jitsu. That's been really good for me. So, you know, and in that way, it's made me a lot more open to other grapplers who are not black belts, right? That know some shit that I don't, and being like, hey, what can you teach me that? Yeah. You know, whereas I don't think that was even a consideration for me before. Like I actually remember talking with do you remember Eric Mastro, American?
Oh, yeah. He's a legend. I mean, he's a black belt at Garage Jiu-Jitsu, right?
That's right. Yeah. And I remember he was one of the first sort of my counterparts to get his black belt, and I was asking him about it, like how's it been? And he's like, man, I'm actually really happy. This sounds really silly for me to say now, but he's like, I'm like super happy to like learn from purple belts and stuff.
Right.
And I was like, oh wow, that's cool. Now this sounds absurd because where we are now in jiu-jitsu, there's nothing novel about that.
No.
There's purple belts that have trained at New Wave or B Team that come back and run seminars because they've got this knowledge, right?
Sure.
But back then in the kind of old sphere of jiu-jitsu, that wasn't the thing. Yeah. Like you would
only learn from a black belt or a master.
That's exactly
or a world
right.
champion or
exactly. So yeah, it's just funny reflecting on that and being like, yeah, totally. But I get his point whereby you start to realize, and similar to your first insight, was that anyone can teach you things. Like there's value in everywhere if you're looking for it.
Yeah, if you're open to the lesson.
Yeah,
it is there in front of you. I got one more, and I think this is part of the evolution of jiu-jitsu, and there's many different reference points to this. And like maybe it's only come to me now, well not now, but like in the last couple of years as a black belt, but it was forming over time. Which is like you shouldn't really allow your coach's limits to be your limits. And this isn't, you know, we're all limited in our scope of learning and our lifestyle and what we can do. Because if you run a gym, you got to be there, you got to run that gym. It would be very difficult for you to travel around the world and compete and do all that, unless you've got a counterpart who can hold it down for you to do that. The best people I have seen over time go and train at lots of different gyms. They are from their gym. They represent their gym, their coach, whatever. But they'll go train at Atos, or they'll go train at, you know, New Wave, or wherever they can go, or they'll go to different gyms to accumulate different perspectives, and they kind of synthesize it for themselves. And, you know, Lachlan Giles is a really good example of that. And I think anyone who's done really well in life and in learning and in jiu-jitsu, they move out of their hometown, right? Like there's an element of that. You crave more. You learn to the maximum of what you have. But then there's folks who, for example, they might just go, nah, this is our style. Our style of jiu-jitsu is this. We don't do that. And I've never really understood why people would block knowledge. And really, what that person is saying is, I'm not prepared to learn that. I don't want to learn that. I'm not prepared to grow in that way. And so,
or I'm not prepared to risk exposing myself.
partly,
Like there's a vulnerability in going out of your circle, right?
yeah, but maybe they just don't have the financial ability or the freedom of time or the,
Also,
not everyone is Joseph Chen. Like, young, free, and capable to just train anywhere, everywhere with everyone.
Right.
To do that. And obviously there are some folks who are blessed and they can get it together. And then there's some folks who just sacrifice everything for this thing, which is jiu-jitsu, and they commit all their finances and their life to the thing. And for the best part, that's what people who want to be the best do. But the reason why I say don't let your coach's limitations be yours, I'm not saying this as a critique of coaches. I'm saying that there is a mistake we make that we think our coach is the all-knowing oracle. And it's like when you're a kid and you think your parents are like, they know everything. And then you grow up and you're like, nah, they did the best they could with what they had.
Yeah.
And it was good enough for you to get to where you are. But once you're a fucking adult, you're like, well, I got to do it for me. I got to learn for me. Maybe they made some mistakes. I'm not going to make those mistakes, whatever it might be.
Mom, send me a meatloaf recipe.
Meatloaf, Mom. Fuck. What's she doing? I never know what she's doing.
Died in a hang gliding accident. What a fucking idiot. So savage.
If you get the reference, good. If you know, you know. I think the thing is that I've had a lot of different coaches. Like, I've been very lucky, and some people might say, oh, you've changed gyms too many times, blah, blah, blah. People don't like that. But each time I've learned different lessons personally and jiu-jitsu wise from those different coaches. And I still carry all those lessons with me. And I think that makes me better in terms of understanding jiu-jitsu because I didn't just stay in the one spot. I got to a point where I'm like, I'm not learning anymore. I have to change.
Yeah.
And I think it was in my subconscious, I was sitting there. And now that, since I've got my black belt and since I've looked at other black belts, the best ones and what they do, they just keep fucking learning. And it doesn't mean they change gyms. They might go do judo or wrestling. And they're just finding different ways to become better grapplers or better people. And you're like, that's great. That willingness to suck again, learn again, it's pretty awesome.
I think Gordon Ryan really had a good point when he made this critique about the sort of the elite of jiu-jitsu just like relying on a game that they developed years ago.
Right.
And he was like, these guys have been doing the same shit that got them to black belt and it's still winning at the top level and they're just doing the same thing. And he really smashed that, right? Because he just did walk through everyone. And, and I share the same views with you about him as an individual or an influencer. But I was like, that's a really good point. And so there's a thing there, like a common thread in terms of that really chasing evolution forever. And it doesn't always have to be necessarily your jiu-jitsu technique, right? It might be, now I'm working on my habits outside of jiu-jitsu so that I can show up and still be healthy and strong, all that shit, right? That was actually my last insight, which I'll add, which ties into that. And that was that it's kind of, I don't know if you've ever heard, you would have heard Chris Houter, the American guy, saying that the people that make it to black belt are the people that show up, right? Keep showing up?
Well, I think
keep showing up and you'll get to black belt?
There's a few phrases. I think he's like, it's not who's the best, it's who's left.
It's who's left, right? Yeah. Now,
survivorship bias.
Yeah, and exactly. And people have criticized that. But I do largely agree with that statement.
Dude, it's entirely true. For the stats, just to support this, 80% of people who start jiu-jitsu don't make it past blue belt.
Right, yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
How many people have tried jiu-jitsu and just didn't continue?
Left. Yeah.
We don't know because we're still in the bubble. We're still deep in the culture. We're like, those people don't exist to us.
We haven't taken up bouldering yet.
No, well, sometimes recreationally. But they're not here anymore.
But so the what I think is really paramount on that idea, and of course this doesn't apply to the younger generation, to the J-Rods or the Micah Galvans or this young generation that we see now. But I think that this speaks to people who pick it up in adulthood.
Sure.
And I think that that's going to be a forever thing, right?
It is.
There's always going to be mature age people starting jiu-jitsu. but it's the people who are able to continue that make it to black belt.
Yeah.
And most people will have something that makes them unable to do so, whether that's like a mental thing or it's a physical thing like an injury. Right? Or just their lifestyle is a shambles.
Family.
Yeah, right. It just makes it the thing where they go, oh, I'm just going to go to the gym and forget about jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
But there's a second layer off the back of that, and that is that, and you see this now, you see a lot of people make it to black belt and they're really just crawling over the finish line.
Yeah.
Because they've endured so much damage in the lead up to getting their black belt that by the time they get there, they're like, oh, thank God.
I can retire.
Yeah. And so, you know, that is totally fine, right? For some people, that's the place that they wanted to get to, and so be it.
It's a huge achievement.
It's massive, and no one says you got to go on, right?
No.
But it's also something to consider of like, what could I be doing better so that as I go down this path, I'm not sacrificing other aspects of my health.
Stay in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the interesting thing, this actually comes from an interview from a famous graffiti artist, and he was saying that, like, you know, it's a metaphor for life. But you're saying, you know, that there's a race. We're all part of this race, and when you're in the race, you try to stay at the front of the line. And he's like, sometimes you need to take a break, and so you step out of the race, and the race just goes on without you, and you try to come back in, and then there's all these new people in the race, and no one knows who you are, and then you have to fight so hard to get to the front of the line again. And he's like, but what you realize is, as soon as you're no longer racing, it doesn't matter, and the race will continue. And it, you know, he was talking about trying to get famous and be successful as an artist and all this. And it's the same is true of jiu-jitsu, but this idea of just being able to stay in it as long as you can, to enjoy it for as long as you can. There's a big difference between being forced out and choosing to be like, okay, I can step away.
Yeah.
Because that's a terrible feeling when, whether it's a knee injury or a new job or something just in life happens and you can no longer do the thing you love. Not, I've done what I wanted here, I'm moving on. That's a completely different feeling. And I think that's what we're getting at.
Good chat.
Man, insights from the black belt minds. Now, some of you out there, black belts, hearing this, you probably have different insights. Please let us know in the comments. I think this is a very relevant thing that once you've done something for a long time, you do come to conclusions that you just wouldn't have had earlier in the journey. So we appreciate you guys. Thanks for staying to the end. We know it's only about 20% of y'all, but while you're there, give us a like, give us a subscribe. We appreciate y'all.